Hello, everybody, and welcome to round 4 of the 2020 GP4 Offline Championship. We are here at the popular Hockenheim ring in Hockenheim, Baden-Württemberg for the German Grand Prix. I am JW97. You may have heard me commentate yesterday during the F2 qualifying because Rob was unavailable, and I'm joined by the same person who was alongside me for that F2 commentary. That is Ra.
Yep, hello.
Of course, Ra was only a reserve that time by because Leighton's microphone decided to go on strike for some reason. But anyway, we are here for practice, and as you can see, we've got a bright and sunny day for this practice session. And we were expecting a test drive for this one because I think a lot of us were expecting Dennis Graff to be in the car for today in the Ferrari, but unfortunately, one certain Ferrari driver didn't get back to him with his request, so unfortunately, Dennis Graff will not be driving around at Hockenheim. So, bit of a shame, really, that one of the German stars, who's a test driver, won't be driving around Hockenheim. But at least Sontag and Q-Pot will be. So, I think without further ado, let's get on with the practice session here at Hockenheim. Now, of course, you may remember this track was a reserve track last season because, of course, we were last season meant to go to the Dutch Grand Prix at Zandvoort. But, of course, the version that we were using had a particular issue with one particular corner, which I believe was turn 9, if I'm not mistaken, which forced that despite Yuri trying to fix it several times, none of the solutions he had seemed to work for whatever reason. So, ended up going here instead to Hockenheim when we all thought it was going to disappear for 2020, and it proved to be a very interesting race last season, which saw George Roke take victory, his 5th career win, and Racing Points versus that name for in 2020, and the first since 2009 that the Silverstone-based team ever got a win. It was the only win they got that season because, of course, Roland Mottram could have had a win in 2020, but of course he ended up having some bad luck during the season, which prevented him from getting that victory. But George Roke returns here, of course, looking to see if he can make it 2 wins on the bounce here at Hockenheim, as Laura Chung is the first driver on track here for this 40-minute practice session. And I will remind people again, for anybody who's just joined us, of course, we do have the spare car ban, which has been in effect since round 2. So if anybody breaks down or crashes, that will be their session done with. No spare cars for them. But we might as well talk about Lamborghini Ra because it wasn't the best weekend for them in Baku. It's the first time they had a non-points finish.
Yep, indeed, Laura Chung really struggled with the three-stop strategies, and she did really have the pace to get the points, but unfortunately the three-stop wasn't the ideal strategy, well, especially when they're on the hards. And looking at this, we are obviously going to be on the hards again, so I don't really see the three-stop being the ideal strategy at all.
It could all depend on the degradation, of course, because we know that the wear rate does seem to change everywhere we go. It's obviously done on a random indicator. But yeah, if you didn't catch what Ross said there, the tyres we are using for the 3rd race in a row is the hard tyre. I think it's been a while since we've had 3 consecutive races on the same compound. I can't remember the last time we had that, to be honest with you. It might have been the 2015 season. I could be wrong on that, the way we had 3 consecutive compounds in a row, because I think ever since then, it's usually been either 2 in a row or just 1, and then the next race is another tyre compound. I can't remember the last time it was ever 3 in a row. So it could be very interesting to see, but again, we'll have to wait and see what the tyre deg is like here at Hockenheim. Now, one person who'll be hoping the tyre deg works well for him here is, of course, Amar Carr. We did mention it, of course, before the stream began, of course, that Carr has always seemed to have some bad luck around here in past few seasons, and, well, he's hoping to clear that luck this time by Ra.
I feel like he's going to be optimistic on this one, have low expectations, and he's just hoping that he pretty much does better than his expectations.
Indeed so. We look at the Aston Martin now of Roland Mottram, and we might as well talk about Aston Martin because a great race for them last time out in Baku, thanks to the strategy. Julius Anderson, who seems to really like the Baku track, given that was where he got his last podium back in 2017, obviously finished in 6th place in the Aston Martin, which has lifted him up to 8th in the Constructors' Championship ahead of Alfa Romeo, Alfa Tauri, and of course Williams, who are now the only team that are yet to score a point this season. But yeah, a very good weekend for Aston Martin, given the car they've got this season.
Yep, indeed, and it pretty much shows that they really enjoyed the street tracks. Even though Australia was a bit of a disappointment, but I mean they were kind of there in Australia. But yeah, they needed the points after what happened in China, and yeah, they got it and pretty much deserved.
Indeed so, as Roke tries to overtake one of the AlphaTauris there. I think that might be Miklos Galli's trying to get by. I could be wrong on that. No, it's David Kupak. It's number 36. As meantime, Fraser goes to the top of the moment by 7,000 of a second ahead of Amelia Wilson. We might as well talk about Fraser because once again, another strong weekend for Daniel Fraser. You wouldn't have thought that he was a man coming into this season under a little bit of pressure after what had been a very difficult 2020 season. But it seems that this season... he seems to be a changed driver. 2 points finishes in a row, coming at China and of course Azerbaijan. And he just seems to be a driver on form at the moment. As we see Gal go wide, there's Perinen who's going at the top, trying to get past him. As now Galloway goes to the top. But a very good weekend, you'd have to say, for the very good 2 weekends for Daniel Fraser. Do you think he could keep it up, Ra?
Yeah, I think he can keep it up, and the house does seem to look good right at this point, and. Yeah, I mean, it's really promising, but then again, in Hockenheim, there is a lot of straights. So, it might not be easy, but it will be a challenging one if he can get points here.
Indeed so. We notice that Lopez is actually down at the bottom of the leaderboard. I wonder if he's being held up in traffic just like George Roke is at the moment, and also carrying one of the Ferraris behind, that being Chris Chatfield. It was obviously a tricky weekend at Baku for Ferrari. 8th place for Jake Galloway, and Chris Chatfield not scoring a point. It was kind of an odd weekend for Ferrari, it's fair to say, Ra.
Yeah, it was really odd, and I have no idea how that happened. And yeah, I mean, Chatfield really had the same failure as Sun, but was way worse out of it. But yeah, he finished 12th, and Galloway did manage to get points. 8, get more points than he had within the season. But yeah, it's not what he hoped for, and he's hoping for more this race.
Be hoping so indeed. Well, Galloway at the top of the moment. I don't know whether that will be an omen for the remain, especially when it comes to qualifying, but we've still got plenty of time left. It didn't even help as well last time out for Ferrari that they seemed to lack a bit of straight line speed, especially when they came up to the back of a Mercedes powered car. They just seemed to struggle to get by, and that's what you could argue cost Chris any chance of a good finish at Baku, and that's why he ended up finishing in 12th position. Another man you could also say who is surprisingly on form is the man we're looking at right now, David Kupak, of course. Obviously, we know how off the pace the AlphaTauri has been throughout this season, hence why their qualifying has been a little bit down the drain, it's fair to say. But Kupak has been able to try and find a way to get points in the last 2 races. It may have been low points finishes, but considering the car they have, Kupak also a man you could say is on form right now, especially going into his home race.
Yep, indeed, and that's what he needs, and hopefully can get more points and maybe get a better result here. But we will see. Time will tell, and hopefully he can do well.
Brendan, meanwhile, goes back to the top of the timing sheets, getting above Jake Galloway at the moment, who had been at the top for a little bit. As meanwhile, Lopez is up on his personal best. You could argue by a little bit of slipstream he's getting from Julius Anderson in front. Can he potentially try and get by him into the hairpin? No. Anderson saying no to that one at the moment. But we might as well mention, for anybody who hasn't seen the schedule at the beginning of the show, or even didn't see it in the thumbnail, of course, we've had to have a little bit of a change to the schedule for the race, of course, because unfortunately Yuri had a little bit of a last-minute commitment from his work, which has not really impressed him, it's fair to say, if you've seen on his Twitter, to the point where the race is actually going to happen on the Thursday instead of tomorrow, guys. So basically what we're seeing today is basically the qualifying that will determine the grid for later on, of course, when we get to qualifying. The qualifying session which will determine the grid for Thursday's German Grand Prix as opposed to tomorrow's German Grand Prix. So it'll be on at the same time at 5 PM BST, so there's no issues there. And of course, we can get away with having a race on a Thursday now because, of course, obviously you may remember that used to be the slot where Formula E used to have races, but ever since Yuri took over as host after I had to retire because of issues on my PC, obviously, that has been moved to weekends now, along with the World Champ Car Series, so it means that Thursdays have now been free up again, and that's why Yuri can sort of take advantage with the Thursday day now. So, yeah, it's a bit of an awkward one, and hopefully Yuri doesn't encounter this with his work again, but knowing what we've seen in the past, it might happen again, because we know that Yuri has had a bit of a tendency to be a little bit frustrated with his job. But, yeah, that's kind of that, really. So, yeah, so that's that really. So the race will be happening on a Thursday, guys, as opposed to tomorrow instead. So tomorrow we'll have a day off, and then on Thursday we will have the 67-lap German Grand Prix. But hopefully it shouldn't affect your viewing pleasure a bit too much, really. Anyway, we're now looking at Laura Chung, who's in ninth place at the moment and currently still up on her personal best at this point in time. Chatfield goes up into 7th place, getting above Felix Sontag, who's so far having a pretty good session so far in the Williams, up in 8th position. And he'll be hoping he has a better German Grand Prix than he did, I believe, last season, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong on that. Yeah, because I think he did also. I think he's actually retired. Ooh, that was close there between Lopez and Anderson, as Lopez got up into 2nd there. I do believe that, I might be wrong on this, but I think Sontag has actually retired from the last 2 German Grand Prix. He's not had the best of luck when it comes to his home race, so he'll be hoping he can rectify that this season. So we'll have to wait and see on that one. But on the topic of Lopez, who nearly had a bit of a collision there with Anthony, he's been stuck behind him for quite a while, despite the fact that he's still somehow managing to find a way to improve on his best times at the moment. Lopez, well, it's not been the best of starts of the season, really, for me. He's obviously had a crash last time out with Evan Byrne at Baku, and he's only scored a total of 6 points so far this season, finding himself in 12th in the Drivers' Championship, and so far this season, he has yet to get a Q3 appearance because the first 3 races he's failed to get into Q3. He's just not had a good time of it in qualifying so far.
Yep, indeed. It does look predictable that the Mercedes can get eliminated from cannot make it into Q3, and it is strange to see the Mercedes not getting into the top 10 consistently. And we haven't really had this in a very long time.
Yeah, and especially when you look at how well Car's doing at the moment, considering the car that Mercedes have as Lopez looks like he's finally got by an answer there, had to literally dive him there into the first corner. It's a bit weird seeing Lopez struggle at the moment, but hopefully he can find his feet here at Hockenheim, although this track has also played host to a bit of bad luck for him in the past. It's not been a very good track for Mercedes in the past either, so who knows, maybe the opposite could happen now. It appears that they don't seem to have the fastest car anymore. You could argue, because I think we talked about it yesterday, that you could argue they probably have the 3rd quickest car perhaps, because we believe that the Renault might have a little bit more pace in them, judging from what we saw at Baku. So that could be something that would be very, very interesting indeed to keep an eye out on. Meanwhile, the current championship leader, Franco Gamba, currently up in 2nd place at the moment, and Gamba really a man on form at the moment. Of course, he's not wanting to jump to conclusions at the moment because he doesn't want to get ahead of himself. But so far, he has had a very good start to the season. A lot of people are saying that he could be the early favourite now to win this season's championship. Are they speaking a little bit too soon, or do you think that they might have a case?
They might have a case, but it can be a bit too soon knowing that knowing that what could happen. I mean, you can't really rule out George Roque at the moment, even though he is way behind his teammate Franco Gamba and even on my car. But yeah, I think it could be about between the 2 teammates of Gamba and Roque, but we'll see. We might see a late charge of George Roque, so, and also Rogue's tended to be better in the second half, so I would assume that you cannot rule out George Roque later on in the season.
Indeed, and so at the moment, Roque is only down in 14th at the moment, and yeah, Gamba currently the early championship leader, and to back your point up there, right, you got to remember as well, last season, Amar Khan, of course, won the first 2 races of last season, and a lot of people were already thinking he was going to be the early favourite, but then we saw the run of bad luck he had, and that obviously swung back into Lopez's favour in the end. So, who knows, really? I'm not going to say that's going to happen to Gamba, but it's one of those situations where I don't think people can talk too soon because, you know, anything could happen in this championship, and particularly how close the field spread is this season. Anything could really happen.
Yeah, indeed, and of course you've had that in other series as well, where there is times where other drivers are in championship contentions, but then you speak too soon, and then they literally drop off.
Indeed, as it could be very, very interesting to see if Gamba can keep this up, of course, because of course last time out in Baku, of course, which he won, might as well point this out as well, it's the first time he won in dry conditions, because his first 3 wins came in wet conditions. I guess because it has been a little bit of a running joke in the OC, I guess he doesn't really need wet conditions after all to win races. I guess he just needs to, you know, believe in himself, I guess. So anyway, but at the moment, whilst we were talking, Chatfield has got up into 3rd position, so it's currently 3rd and 5th for the 2 Ferrari drivers, so already looking better in this practice session, but of course this is only practice. We haven't got to the main qualifying yet. The whole pack so far separated by 1.2 seconds. Well, Joseph Willows at the moment currently down in 17th position, not exactly where he wants to be so far in this practice session. His teammate is only in 15th. But last time out in Baku, the McLaren looked particularly strong, it's fair to say, and could have been looking at a very strong double points finish if it weren't for De Rosa running into a bit of debris, which practically basically ended his race there because he only ended up finishing in 17th. Never was able to recover. Speaking of De Rosa, he's just set an identical time to Roman Quarg. But yeah, Joseph Willows, fifth position, was battling at one point for a podium, but it does seem that we're starting to see that potential that McLaren have been teasing, but they've been able to maximise that we've seen in the first couple of races.
They are clearly quicker than Lamborghini, and I mean the first few races they didn't really take the chances, but this time they took it after Lamborghini's downfall from Baku. But hopefully they can keep it up, and I mean it's very clear that the McLaren are the fourth quickest car, no fourth, fifth I think, fourth or fifth quickest car. But yeah, they have to show it, and they are really taking their chances.
Indeed, and it'll be interesting to see if McLaren can build it here at the German Grand Prix. They'll be hoping to, and one thing they'll be hoping to do is hopefully have a double points finish this time by after what happened in Baku. Meantime, whilst we're speaking, Jake Galloway has got up into second place. So Ferrari looking particularly strong around here at Hockenheim. Whether they can keep that up going into qualifying, it will be another question as well, because we do often see at times the pecking order liking to change between practice and qualifying, as Motrin makes a mistake going through into the second to last corner, and we saw a few of these mistakes yesterday, Ra, when we were commentating the F2 qualifying session, and it's very clear that this particular complex is very tricky for the drivers.
Yeah, that's going to be a corner to watch for drivers to make mistakes, even some other corners as well. Given other. Yeah, Brennan had to back out here.
Yeah, he was very close to being collected there by Roland Motrin. Good reaction time there from the 2019 BTCC champion, who's so far at the top of the time sheets. May as well talk about Perinin as well whilst we're at it, of course. Another second place finish at the moment, having a very good start in his rookie season, it's fair to say. Probably, you could argue, an early contender for Rookie of the Season, along with yourself, you could say, Ra. Yeah, he was a little bit disappointed last time out because he felt he could have had a chance to win the race at Baku had Renault put him on the correct strategy, of course, because as you may know, because throughout the entirety of the race, he was battling with Franco Gamba throughout the most of it. At one point, it was for second place, but then when Byrne retired, of course, Byrne was on the same strategy as Perrin, and it seemed it looked like he was on a two-stop, maybe a three-stop. We weren't 100% sure, but we didn't really know what Byrne could have done had he not crashed with Lopez in that race. But when he did retire, of course, it left the door open for Gamba and Perrin to challenge for the win. But because he was on the two-stop and Gamba was on the one-stop, and given that it seemed that the hard tyres were making it difficult for people to catch up or even pull away during that race, it prevented any chance for Perrin to try and go for the victory in that race. And he was a little bit gutted that he wasn't able to do that.
Yep, indeed, and yeah, I would be in the exact same position as him if I was in that position. But yeah, it was a shame for Pernin that he couldn't win the race. I mean, it was a golden opportunity, but the time will come.
Yeah, I think a lot of people have said that Perrin's time will eventually come. It's very clear that, because we've even seen it when he was in the series in previous series he's been in, BTCC and GP2, that he does have a lot of potential, and I think he does have the potential to win a race this season. Whether he can go for a championship this season, I'm not too sure. I'm not sure if the Renault is capable of doing that this season. It's very clear that they do have a strong car, but whether they're able to challenge the Red Bull on a consistent basis, because we know how strong the Red Bull is, that is going to be a bit of a question. But I think if it's anything that to go by in Baku, maybe they could challenge them, but I think they need a string of consistency if they want to challenge them this season. Same goes with the likes of Mercedes, who I do think they can challenge them as well, but they do need to try and sort that out as well, especially with one of their cars as well, who seems to be struggling this season. So, but Red Bull looking the most consistent so far this season. Speaking of which, we just saw Rote there going up on his personal best in the first sector there. So he's looking at an improvement. He's only down in 14th position at this point in time. Byrne clarifying that he was on a free stop. So may have been a bit difficult for him.
Yeah.
But you never know, of course. As Roke had a little bit of an error there going through into the banked left-hander, and might have cost him a little bit, but I would imagine he's still going to improve on his best time nonetheless. Let's see. Roke crosses the line, and no, in fact, he did lose time from that little mistake, so he lost a lot of time than I thought
Two
from that
attempts,
error he
I
made
think.
at the bank corner. Galloway goes up into second. We saw that Garber also improved a little bit as well, and as you can see, Roland Motrin as well on the timing screen as we look back now at Laura Chung, who is, along with Rahul Patel, looking to put the disappointed Baku behind them as Lamborghini look to try and see if they can get a strong result here at the Azerbaijan Grand Prix. Verderi, meanwhile, getting up into 13th position, getting in front of Daniel Fraser. Verderi, of course, last time out in Baku, finally was able to finish a race after failing to finish in the first two races, but it wasn't anything to note about for Verderi, hence why he's still down in last in the Drivers' Championship, because I think it's fair to say that Roman Quarg, his teammate, so far having a better season than Verderi, considering the fact that he hasn't been in a top class car for 4 seasons, and these cars, of course, are a lot different to the ones he drove back in 2016.
Yep, indeed, and I do have to say this. I think Federi is one of the shockers of the season. Not pretty much with Nico Scal, but I feel like he is one of the shockers of the season at the moment.
To be fair, I don't think most of it is his fault, to be honest, with Verderi, because you got to remember in the first race he was challenging for points. You may remember because he was around where Kupok and Anderson was, and then of course he was involved in that free car crash that happened at that corner, which led to Anderson getting a 10-place grid penalty. And then in China again was challenging for points, but had a mechanical failure which prevented him from finishing the race. So he has had some bad luck this season, and of course in Baku you could argue as well. Again, he obviously collided with yourself, of course, on the first lap, which prevented him from possibly maybe challenging for points again. So Verderi has had quite a lot of bad luck this season, but he'll be hoping to try and see if he can rectify that here at Germany. Gal, you could argue as well, has also had some bad luck as well in some capacity. I mean, in Melbourne he was off the pace. Let's not beat around the bush there. But of course in China he was around the same pace as his teammate David Kupok, and then of course in Baku. Again, you could argue he was probably off pace there as well, but it didn't help he got spun off at the start of the race during that Roland Motrin and Felix Sontag collision that happened at the first corner. So, yeah, Gal I could argue probably having a worse season than Verderi, it's fair to say, in terms of where we've seen them during the races. But yeah, in terms of bad luck, Verderi has got to be up there.
Yeah, indeed, and there is lots of differences between this and some comparisons, but there's more differences between those two.
Indeed, and whilst we were talking there, I think there was an improvement I just saw there that went a little bit further off. I think it might have been Chatfield that got up into 4th. Obviously, we saw Roke go up into 9th. Willow's only still 18th at the moment. Carr all the way down in 20th at the moment, so that's not exactly ideal for the Mercedes driver.
I mean, the field is like the entire field is nearly around a second between each other. So it looks really interesting, but I don't think it will last this long.
Indeed, as Byrne now then comes up towards the stadium section, the Mercedes grandstand now. Then Byrne currently in its 6th position and looking to see if he can put the disappointment of Baku behind it, because we've seen that Byrne has got the potential of fighting for a win this season, but like we've seen a few times with Byrne, always seems to get himself in the rough of bad luck, it seems, Ra.
Yep, indeed. He's got to get that out of the way. And yes, he's got his first pole position in a very long time, but can he get his first win in a very long time? We will find out. But he has to really get that bad luck out the way, and even the strategies.
Indeed, as Chatfield goes up into 3rd place, Garber remaining in 4th despite the improvement. But yeah, as you were saying there, Byrne, of course, last time he's won a top class race, of course, was back at the 2012 Spanish Grand Prix. And when it comes to GP4 as a whole, that was in 2014 in DTM. I believe it was at Montreal, if I'm not mistaken. So it has been a while since we've seen Byrne on the top step of a podium. One person as well, we might as well talk about the entirety of the OC that finally was able to break their winning streak. The winless streak was Robert Ionescu. If you didn't see this past Sunday with Formula E, as Verderi goes up into an impressive 5th place in the Alfa Romeo, Robert Ionescu, for the first time in 7 seasons, was finally able to reach the top step of the podium after he won at the Mexico City Prix after doing a final lap overtake on Brandon Jackson. And, well, it's been a long time coming for Rob, wasn't it, Ra?
Yeah, and I think everyone, I mean, especially me in the chat, was really happy to see Robert Ionescu finally winning a race after such a long time, after what has happened to him, especially with him after the last few years since his last win, and yeah, I'm really happy, and hopefully he can get more wins. He could probably win the championship, but we can't really say anything too early.
Yeah, because anything could happen in, well, any series really, not just the series that Robbie's in, which is Formula E, but any series that we talk about in this, anything could still happen, especially if you're in either F2 or DTM, that's for sure, because it seems to be a little bit more closer than what it is in Formula E World Champ Car, and you could also say in a way the top class as well. But anyway, as Anderson now then just makes his way around the final turn, he's going to cross the line, and it doesn't look like he was going to be on an improvement anyways. Byrne currently getting held up by one of the Williamses in front. And just looking down at the leaderboard, I think both Williamses are out on track at the moment. Where is Sontag's name? Yeah, it's Sontag. In fact, he's being held up by now that the name has come up. So Byrne clearly getting held up by one of the home favourites here at the German Grand Prix. As Byrne makes his way past the Mercedes grandstand, as he now just comes out towards where the drag strip is, and we're not looking at improvements here for Byrne, given how much he's being held up by at this point in time. Just looking down the rest of the field, Amelia Wilson currently in ninth position. She only just missed out on getting points last time out in Baku, which was a little bit of a shame because Haas came very close to getting a double points finish. But I think it's fair to say, I think a lot of people are a bit surprised at the moment that Fraser has got the upper hand on her at the moment.
Yep, indeed. It shows he has really improved and he's really got along with the team. And yeah, I feel like that livery really does suit Fraser. I mean, especially he did win the DTM championship with that sponsor, as Patel's actually improved to fifth. Speaking of which, and he used to be in that car where Daniel Fraser was in back in 2019. But yeah, moving on, and Fraser has done pretty well, and he's got to keep it up. And yeah, Wilson, hopefully she can finally score points.
We'll see, of course, but of course you got to remember where Amelia Wilson scored points last season. It was at the Belgian Grand Prix, so who knows really? Maybe she could do that again when we go to Belgium, or maybe it could come a little bit sooner. Should we hope it comes sooner, given how many points that Fraser has scored? Because already they've managed to eclipse their points tally from last season. Not like it was too difficult to do, but by a massive amount, of course, because they only scored, let's not forget, 2 points last season, Haas, and they've already eclipsed that by scoring 14 points this season. And Haas currently lying in 7th in the Constructors' Championship, ahead of Aston Martin, Alfa Romeo, AlphaTauri, and of course Williams. Williams, of course, finding themselves down in last in the Constructors' Championship, the only team so far still yet to score a point in 2021. And we've been talking about it a few times. That I was actually a bit surprised at Williams. Didn't really didn't really improve on last season, because I think it's fair to say the drivers were a little bit optimistic when it came to 2021, as they were hoping that the car would be a massive improvement in 2021 to the point where they'd be fighting maybe in the midfield, but maybe obviously they'd be hoping they'd be having a lot more progress in 2021. But it's fair to say that it hasn't happened this season. And Williams, it's fair to say, probably got one of the slowest cars on the grid. Probably not as worse as the AlphaTauri, but they've not got the best car on the grid. It's fair to say as Lopez goes for a spin. And Roker's collided with him. Both of them losing their front wings, and now they're going to have to try and make their way awkwardly back into the pit lane, which I think they have done. Yes, they have. So both of them back in the pits. But yeah, Roke was clearly a passenger in that one, Ra.
Yep, and he was actually on the personal best as well, and that really cost him dearly.
And Lopez, the second person, of course, to make a mistake around that corner in practice. Of course, we do have different mistake rates for practice qualifying in the race, so maybe that playing into a bit of an effect in practice for Franco Lopez. So I wonder if that's going to be a thing in qualifying when they're all going to be pushing to the limit. As you mentioned earlier, Ral, that's probably one corner to keep an eye on during the course of the qualifying session, as Garber now runs over a bit of debris that was left there by George Rope, but he was coming into the pits anyway. A bit strange there that there was still some debris from Rope, but it doesn't look like that Garber has got any damage from that at all. I think he's probably feeling he'll probably be a little bit confused for a moment, because I bet he thinks it's probably his front wing, and yet you can see it is a bit of George Rope front wing that he's just clipped going into the pit lane there. I bet, like I said, probably going to be a bit confused for a moment, Ra, because I bet he'll be thinking it's his front wing rather than his teammates.
Yep, indeed. You would definitely be jumping out of the car, looking at his front wing, and thinking it's fine.
And then you'll probably realise and see that George is missing a front wing, so you'll be like, okay, it's him. I wonder what on earth has happened to my teammate. Meantime, Willows has gone up into 6th as Patel goes up into fourth position. So fourth and sixth for the two arch nemesis, it's fair to say. And as Daniel Fraser now then comes around turns 2 and 3, followed by his teammate Amelia Wilson, both of them following one of the Lamborghini drivers. I'm going to presume that is Patel that they're following, because it wasn't too long ago that Patel had actually done an improvement there, and it does look like Patel, I think. No, it's actually Chung. It's the number 56, so I presume that Patel is not too far behind this lot. There he is. He's just coming into view now. He's actually just behind Josie. There's actually a big train of cars forming down at this part of the track, it's fair to say. So they were hoping they won't be holding each other up throughout the course of it. As Miklos Gal out on the racetrack now then, and obviously we've been talking about quite a lot how Gal was hoping for a little bit more from the AlphaTauri this season. I think he knew it was going to be a challenge when he joined the team, of course. I don't think he was unaware of it, but I think it's safe to say that I don't think he was expecting this challenge when he joined the team, Ra.
Yep, indeed. I think he was expecting to be like kind of where Lamborghini are now, but I never thought it would be this bad.
It seems that AlphaTauri have not done well when it comes to these new regulations, you could say. Patel further improved, and the top four now only separated by 49 thousandths of a second, so it's quite close in that top four group at the present moment. Two of them, in fact, actually being rookies in that top four, Perrin and Patel. And so doing very well, as Fraser and Mottram at the moment are currently shared on the same time, as you can see, in 16th and 17th. So identical times there for those two. As meantime, Willows is trying to get by on, I think that's Daniel Fraser is trying to get by. No, that's Amelia Wilson, because it's got DHL on the side. So that's that. And as Fraser, this is Fraser we're looking at now. It's just coming up towards the Mercedes grandstand, as he's currently still stuck behind Laura Chung at the moment. But Fraser currently in 16th position at the moment. Wilson currently outpacing him during this practice session, but that could all change when we get into qualifying a little bit later on. And so that's obviously something that we've got to really pay attention to. And obviously, anybody else that we need to talk about, I think. Meanwhile, Carr has actually got up into 13th position. Carr, of course, being the only strong driver so far. Nothing against Lopez, but so far the only person who's been getting a big haul of points in Mercedes this season, given the struggles that Lopez has had in the first 3 races of 2021. But hopefully Lopez can bounce back in these 18 or so races that we've got left in this 2021 season. Willows now then comes up towards the end of Sector 1, 1.6 seconds off, clearly getting held up by Amelia Wilson in front. And he's not close enough to get onto the back of Wilson at the moment, as Fraser coming up to the back of Chung, but it's not going to matter too much because he's coming into business lap. Gal further improved, which means that the whole pack is now separated by under a second. So it just shows how close the field spread is. We keep talking about it every weekend we go to, but it's very telling how close the field spread is this season. So much so that the whole pack is separated by 9/10 of a second, under a second between each of the drivers, as well as trying to find a way through on Wilson into the stadium section. It's not rare that we see overtakes at that corner, but Willow is not able to do so, and now he's got Patel all over the back of him now then, as he just go out of the banked corner now then, as Fraser comes into the pits as expected, and down in 17th place at the moment, with just over 10 minutes to go in this 40-minute practice session, as well as we'll try again on Patel into the first corner, as he's actually going to be pitting at the end of this lap as he goes to try and go down the inside of Fraser. I think I might have accidentally said Patel there whilst I was speaking there. A little bit quick there, but Willows looks like he's been able to get it done. No, he hasn't. Wilson saying no to that. And again, getting the two hatch drivers confused. Federi now makes a mistake going into the second to last corner, so he's the third driver to make a mistake. No. And same thing happening there, and it looks like, I think that might have been Miklos Gal that was the one he collided there. And in fact, both AlphaTauris are in the pit lane, so I can't quite tell.
Oh no!
But it is as Federi misses the pit lane, and he decides to crash it, and that's his session done with. So Federi's session has come to an end, so the spare card ban will be in effect. And I was correct; it was Miklos Gal that was the one that collected him, Ra.
Yep, indeed. That's the second time he's been affected by the spare card ban this Federi, but this time with an incident.
Yes, and he's not really had the rub of the green as he takes a little bit of a Vitaly Petrov style jump there, except
I believe I can fly.
except it's not at Malaysia. This one is clearly at Hockenheim where that jump is. But that is Videri's practice session done with, and he'll have to come back in qualifying a little bit later on, as Videri is currently in 7th position. He hasn't had a very good session up until this point. I'll be worried about that tyre that's on the edge of the track, though, so I'll have to wait and see if anybody else is going to collect that tyre in the background.
Might.
As they're coming around the final corner.
Yep.
Somebody has collected it, and it's a front wing loss for one
Oh,
of the
and the Renault.
Renault as well. Not sure which Renault that is that's lost their front wing, but a Renault and an Aston Martin have lost their front wings in the process there, and we'll have to get a replay on that a little bit later on, I would imagine, once Yuri gets the spare car ban sorted out. But 2 cars without front wings. That is Anderson, and I'm not sure which Renault that was that collected it as well. It was Perinen, in fact, the man who's at the top of the timing sheet, so they're going to have to come back into the pits for a new front wing. You can see there, look, and I think Perinen, yeah, he clipped the Aston Martin front wing that came off of Julius Anderson when he clipped the wheel in front. So both of them are going to have to come in for a new front wing. And but for Videri, as mentioned, his session has come to an end. But luckily, the tyre has now been cleared as a result of Julius Anderson's tyre dilemma there, and that will be done with there as Videri gets hoisted over the barrier, and his session will be done with, as Yuri will now go and ensure that Videri doesn't go back out onto the racetrack. Hence why you can hear some silence in the background, as Lopez now sets an identical time to Rahul Patel. So he now is on a 1 minute 12.169. I was right. 169 is what he's on. So I thought for a minute there was on 269, but I got that right. So lucky me there. But anyway, Galloway now then coming around turns 2 and 3, and currently finding himself in 2nd place, 400s off of Jesus Perinen, the man who of course replaced him at Renault. Of course, don't forget Galloway of course took his first ever win last season at the Chinese Grand Prix, but it has now been over a season since he last took a win. He's desperate to try and get his first win as a Ferrari driver if he can. Ferrari, of course, have not won a race since, I think it was the 2019 Mexican Grand Prix from Joseph Willow. So it's been a while since Ferrari have been on the top step of the podium. So that's that. Meanwhile, then, with just over 7.5 minutes to go, this is what the leaderboard looks like then. So Perinen is at the top, with Galloway in 2nd, Garber 3rd, Patel 4th, Lopez in 5th, followed by Chatfield in 6th, Willow 7th, Videri in 8th, followed by Byrne 9th, De Rosa in 10th, followed by Wilson 11th, Roke in 12th, then it is Carr 13th, Sontag 14th, Chung in 15th, Anderson in 16th, with Fraser 17th, Motrin 18th, Quagga 19th, Cupot 20th, Griffiths 21st, and Gallin 22nd. And just like every time I read through it, something has to change, doesn't it? Because Lopez has now gone up into 2nd place, 3 thousandths off of Jesus Perinen. So he's now finding himself in the top 2 positions at the moment, as Roke now then makes his way through the final few turns on the racetrack towards the final corner, and onto the pit straight then will go George Roke as Carr goes up into 12th. Roke crosses the line, no improvement, and he stays down in 13th position. And clearly just probably just doing some race runs, I would presume, for Roke, because I don't imagine that's the pace he's showing. I think that might change when we get into qualifying, especially if you judge where his teammate Franco Gamba is at the moment, which is up in 4th position. Motrin improves, but stays in 17th position. Motrin, again, the Aston Martins again, seemingly back to reality after what was a strong weekend at Baku, and down in 16th and 17th for the 2 British Racing Green Aston Martin cars. As Roke now then making his way towards where the Mercedes grandstand is, and currently finding himself, as mentioned, in 13th position, slotting in behind Armar Carr, as he now comes down towards where the drag strip is. And Roke, of course, as we talked about earlier on, looking to see if he can make it 2 German Grand Prix wins in a row. Overall would be his 4th win here at Hockenheim, or as people have nicknamed it, Rokenheim, because he seems to really love this track very much indeed. And he's in a very strong car as well, so probably a good chance for him to try and see if he can get another win here at Hockenheim this season. As Carr gets himself into the top 10 now, so up in 10th place goes Armar Carr. As we now look at Joseph Willows, who is still getting held up by a Haas. He already came into the pits, but Willows is now back out on track. But he's once again being impeded by a Haas, and not sure if it's the same Haas he got held up with, which was Wilson. And no, it isn't, because Wilson is in the pits. So it's Fraser that's the one he's being held up by this time, as Motrin goes up into 14th position. So an improvement there for the Hungarian driver. Roke now then approaches the hairpin as he now brakes for the right-hander with 5 minutes to go in this practice session, as we are not far away now from qualifying getting underway to determine the grid for Thursday's German Grand Prix here at Hockenheim, as Lopez now goes to the top of the timing sheet, something we were familiar with last season. Lopez to the top of the timing sheets with a 1 minute 12.040, so Lopez goes to the top by 800 of a second ahead of Jesus Perinen. And as Roke now then comes towards the stadium section, but Lopez looking pretty good, but whether he can transfer that into qualifying, we will have to wait and see. But so far, very encouraging for Lopez at the moment, Ra.
Yeah, but it could be bad news knowing that no one doesn't really want to be top in practice, either in Q1 or Q2. They really want to be top in Q3, but yeah, we'll see what happens as car improves. He's up into 8th place.
So far, the Mercedes then looking like they're just putting in a load of improvements at the moment. Lopez to the top, car in 8th position, so both Mercedes is now in the top 10 positions in front of their home race, it's fair to say, as Roke is actually up on his personal best now in the first sector, so maybe he's starting to put the hammer down, but we'll have to wait and see with his final 2 sectors. I'd like to see if he can keep it up in the Red Bull as he now makes his way down towards the hairpin, which rejoins where the old track was, of course, because they used to go into the forest back in the old days, or if you, I say old days, but obviously DTM still uses that layout in DTM, as Lopez further improves. He now breaks into the 1 minute 11, so 1 minute 11.927 for Franco Lopez. He's now nearly 2 tenths clear of Jesus Perinen. Here comes Roke, and he's still up on his personal best in the second sector, but he's not improved by much though. He's only been able to find 5 thousandths between sectors 1 and sectors 2 there, as Roke now then comes out of the banked left-hander through into the final 4 turns he goes. And now let's see where Roke can improve. I don't expect him to break into the top 10, but you never know. His car goes up into 7th, so further improvements coming from the Mercedes boys as Roke does improve, but he stays in 13th position as Chatfield now trying to overtake Joseph Willows, it looks like, and trying to find a way through if he can, trying to hang it around the outside, which he's trying to, because he's still going to remain side by side going down to what is actually called the Parabolica, as Roke getting a bit of slipstream from an Alfa Romeo there, but he finds himself 3 tenths down in the first sector. I wonder if Quark held him up a bit just as he came out of the pits. Chatfield trying to look on the inside of Willows just in front there. It's not going to work out as Lopez, who was down on his personal best in the middle sector, just has an oversteer moment going through into the bank corner. But we're seeing signs of the old Lopez during this practice session. But again, whether he can keep that up in qualifying or not, we will have to wait and see, as Lopez now just goes down into turn 1 there, using a lot of curb on the outside before he approaches turns 2 and 3 on the racetrack. Through turn 2 and then turn 3 he will go, as Roke now then just goes towards the stadium section. Just over 2 minutes to go now then in this practice session, and we've got Lopez at the top by just under 2 tenths ahead of Jesus Perinen at the moment, and then just a further 400ths exactly ahead of Jake Galloway, who's currently in 3rd position, and looking to see if he can have a very strong weekend here in Germany, because so far he's yet to really have a perfect weekend with his first season at Ferrari. So far Chatfield has had the measure of him this season, although he was able to beat him on pace last time out in Baku, it's fair to say, as Wilson starting what could be a penultimate lap, judging by how much time there is left on the clock, and I think we're going to be riding on board with these drivers for the remainder of the session. Griffiths is coming back into the pit, so that's his session done with. Here comes Jesus Perinen, who has got a fresh front wing after he lost it a little bit earlier on in this practice session. The Spaniard now then comes out of the final turn, and Perinen crosses the line now then, and he stays in second. Franco Lopez doesn't improve, so it's on 1 minute 11.927. Julius Anderson now then, the man who scored points last time out in Baku, crosses the line, no improvement, stays where he is. Patel also stays where he is at the moment, which is P5. Q-Pot will get one more lap in before the session comes to a close, as he's currently down in 20th, only 20th and 22nd for the 2 AlphaTauri drivers at the moment. The 2 in front of Carr are coming into the pits, but it looks like Carr is getting held up on this occasion, but he'll have a clear track in front for his final lap, unless he gets the pit indicator, of course, after he completes this lap, as he comes around the final turn, and Carr will cross the line, and he doesn't improve, and he will have one more lap before the session comes to a close. Roke is done for the day. It looked like he was just doing race runs for this session, as Quag does not improve, and he stays in 19th position. We now look at Amelia Wilson in the Haas now then, coming around the final 2 corners now then, through the final turn and onto the pit straight she will now go, and Wilson crosses the line, and no improvement for her. It was De Rosa who came into the pits as well. Bernie's up on his personal best. Evan Bernie, Irishman, crosses the line, and he doesn't improve. He loses time in the last sector there and remains in 10th position. His teammate Jesus Perrin just comes around the final 2 turns. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Checkered flag is out, and that is the end of the session. And I do believe it was Lopez who was the last to cross the line. I think that was the Mercedes that crossed the line. Anderson doesn't improve. Garber doesn't improve. Patel doesn't improve. He was off by way off there. It looked like he may have made a mistake on his lap there. As Q-Pot doesn't improve. Motrin just getting a mileage run. The car is up on his personal best as expected. Now he's had that traffic cleared off. Let's see if he can go a little bit higher before the end of the session now then. So here comes Armar Carr as he rounds the final corner, and onto the pit straight he goes. His car is going to cross the line now then, and he goes up into 6th. So a big improvement there for him. 1st and 6th for the 2 Mercedes drivers. Here comes Roman Quag, across the line, and he stays in 19th position. Amelia Wilson just coming out of the bank corner now then as she rounds the final 4 corners on the racetrack, as she finds herself in 12th position at the moment. As she now comes down the pit straight, and across the line will go Wilson. No improvement, and she stays in 12th. Byrne looks like he's not going to improve as Garber's crashed it towards the end of the session there. So that's his running done with. And Garber, that's, well, practice for him done with. And it looks like it's a mechanical failure, in fact, for Franco Garber. What, in fact, was the mechanical failure? It's on his steering wheel. And I can't really see. It's a puncher that's caused that, so it might have ripped the suspension off the front. But luckily, it's the end of the session for him, so it's not like he was going to gain any more laps out of it for him. So that's that then for Franco Garber as Perrin comes into the pits, and Lopez comes in the pits. We wait for Sonntag because he was ahead of Lopez before Lopez crossed the line. Sonntag crossed the line, no Perrin, and that's the session done with Lopez at the top, Perrin in 2nd, and Galloway in 3rd. What do you make of that session overall, Ra?
Yeah, it looks like an interesting session, and yeah, the entire field has been close so far. I mean, it's by 1.1 seconds between first to last at the moment, but between 20th to 21st, it was like 3 tenths. So you could tell there is more to find, but I think it could be very close.
So, well, we're just going to take a brief pause for a moment, guys, and then we'll come back with a fresh stream for qualifying. But in the meantime, I've been JW97, he's been Ra, and we'll see you in just a little bit for the qualifying session. See you in a bit.